Hannah Mercer's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she counted the last 3 potatoes in the cellar. 18 children upstairs. Thanksgiving tomorrow. And nothing, absolutely nothing to feed them. She pressed her forehead against the cold stone wall and let the tears come. 3 years running this orphanage. 3 years of miracles scraped together from nothing. But tonight, even God seemed to have turned away. Then she heard it. Wagon wheels on frozen ground. A horse's breath in the darkness outside. Someone was there. Before we continue this story, I'd love for you to subscribe to our channel and follow this journey to the very end. Drop a comment below telling me which city you're watching from. I'm always amazed to see how far these stories travel. Now let's return to Hannah and the mysterious wagon waiting in the darkness. Elkhorn Valley, Wyoming Territory. November 1882. Hannah climbed the cellar stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The kitchen waited above cold and accusing. Mrs. Mercer. Caleb stood in the doorway, 12 years old and already carrying the weight of a man. His eyes searched her face. Did we get the supplies from town? Mr. Patterson's store was closed. She kept her voice steady. The snow came early. Deliveries are delayed. So tomorrow. We'll figure something out, Caleb. We always do. The boy nodded, but she saw the doubt. He'd been at Mercy House long enough to know when adults were lying. The little ones are asking about the turkey, he said quietly. Rosie told them we'd have a real Thanksgiving this year, like families do. Hannah's chest tightened. Go get everyone ready for bed. I need to check something outside. Caleb hesitated. It's freezing out there, ma'am. I know. Go on now. She waited until his footsteps faded up the stairs. Then she grabbed her shawl and stepped onto the back porch. The cold hit her like a slap. Wyoming winter didn't ask permission, it simply took. She wrapped the shawl tighter and stared at the empty yard. Samuel, she whispered to the darkness. I don't know what to do anymore. Her husband had been dead 3 years. 3 years since the diphtheria took him along with half the children in town. She'd taken over Mercy House because someone had to, because grief needed somewhere to go. But grief didn't fill empty bellies. She was about to go back inside when she saw it. A wagon, sitting at the edge of the yard like it had grown there from the frozen earth. Hannah froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Hello? Her voice came out thin, swallowed by the wind. Is someone there? No answer. Just the creak of cold wood settling. She grabbed the lantern from its hook and walked toward the wagon, her boots crunching on frost-hardened ground. Every instinct screamed to go back inside, bolt the door, pretend she'd seen nothing. But the wagon waited. She raised the lantern. Oh my Lord! Flour. A 50-pound sack, maybe more. A turkey cleaned and wrapped in cloth. Potatoes, carrots, onions spilling from wooden crates. Jars of preserved peaches catching the lantern light like amber jewels. Apples. A small sack of peppermints tied with string. Hannah's knees gave out. She caught herself on the wagon's edge, rough wood biting into her palms. Who? She looked around wildly. Who's there? Show yourself. The darkness offered nothing. She found the note tucked beneath the flour sack. Just 4 words in cramped handwriting. For the children. Anonymous. Hannah pressed the paper to her chest and wept. Mrs. Mercer, wake up! Rosie's voice cut through Hannah's exhaustion. She'd fallen asleep at the kitchen table, the note still clutched in her hand. What is it? What's wrong? There's a wagon outside. The 8-year-old's red hair flew wild around her face. Caleb says it's full of food, real food. Hannah stood, joints protesting. I know, sweetheart. I found it last night. Who brought it? I don't know. Rosie's eyes went wide. Was it an angel? Before Hannah could answer, the kitchen door burst open. Caleb stumbled in breathless. Ma'am, you need to see this. The wagon, it's got markings. Iron bands on the wheels, special kind. I've only seen that work from one place. Where? Cartwright Station. Hannah's blood went cold. You're certain? My pa worked there before. Caleb stopped. Before he died was what he didn't say. I'd know that iron work anywhere. Mr. Cartwright does it himself. Used to be a blacksmith before he married up. Elijah Cartwright. The name carried weight in Elkhorn Valley. Richest rancher in 3 counties. Hadn't been seen in town for nearly 4 years, not since his wife and newborn son died on the same terrible night. Why would he? Hannah shook her head. Never mind. Help me unload this before the children wake. Too late. Caleb gestured toward the stairs where small faces peered through the railing. They've been watching since dawn. Little Thomas stood apart from the others, 5 years old, silent since the fire that killed his parents. He stared at Hannah with enormous dark eyes, thumb in his mouth. All right. Hannah straightened her spine. Everyone come help. We've got a Thanksgiving to prepare. The children erupted down the stairs in a chaos of excited voices. Hannah directed the unloading, her mind racing. Elijah Cartwright, the ghost of Elkhorn Valley. Why would a man who'd locked himself away from the world send food to orphans? And more importantly, what did she owe a stranger who wouldn't show his face? Nanko. The Thanksgiving meal was the finest Mercy House had seen in years. Hannah watched the children devour turkey and potatoes, their faces bright with joy she hadn't seen in months. Even Caleb smiled, really smiled, as he helped the younger ones with their plates. But her eyes kept drifting to the window, to the road that led north toward the high country where Cartwright Station sat like a fortress against the world. You're thinking about him. Hannah startled. Martha Dawson stood beside her, having arrived with fresh bread and sharper questions. I don't know what you mean. Don't play coy with me, Hannah Mercer. The whole town's buzzing. Eli Cartwright sent food to the orphanage. First time he's done anything but hide in 4 years. How do you know it was him? Martha raised an eyebrow. Because I sold him half those provisions 2 days ago. Rode into my store at dawn, bought everything without a word, and rode out before I could ask a single question. Hannah set down her fork. Why would he do this? That's what I'm asking you. I've never spoken to the man. I've been here 3 years and never once seen him. Nobody has. Not since Clara died. Martha's voice softened. She was my friend, you know, before you came. Sweetest woman in the valley. And Eli, you should have seen him before. Laughed all the time. Built that big house with his own hands. Was going to fill it with children. What happened? The baby came early. Something went wrong. Clara bled out before the doctor could get there, and the baby... Martha shook her head. Little Benjamin lived 3 hours. Eli held him the whole time. Hannah's throat closed. She knew that grief. Knew what it meant to hold someone you loved while their life slipped away. He buried them on the hill behind the house, Martha continued. Hasn't let anyone up there since. The hands say he walks up there every morning. Sits between their graves for an hour no matter the weather. Hannah didn't have words. 4 years of that, Hannah. 4 years of living like a ghost. And then suddenly he's buying provisions for orphans. Martha leaned closer. Something's changed. Or someone. It wasn't me. I've never even... Maybe not you directly, but those children, those voices carrying across the valley when they play, that light in your windows at night. Martha smiled sadly. Some men need to be reminded that the world keeps spinning, even when their own world stopped. After Martha left, Hannah stood at the window for a long time. 18 children. 1 mysterious rancher. A wagon full of provisions that felt less like charity and more like... what? A prayer. A confession. She made her decision before she fully understood it. Caleb. The boy looked up from helping Rosie with her dessert. I need you to watch the children tomorrow. I'm going to pay a visit. To Cartwright Station. His eyes widened. Ma'am, nobody goes up there. The hands run everyone off. Then I'll introduce myself to the hands first. He won't see you. Maybe not. Hannah lifted her chin. But I'm going to thank him anyway. A man who feeds hungry children deserves to hear gratitude, whether he wants it or not. Caleb studied her face. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. Be careful, ma'am. Folks say he's different now. Not mean, just empty. Empty can be filled, Caleb. That's what I have to believe. The ride to Cartwright Station took 2 hours in the bitter cold. Hannah had borrowed the church's small wagon, bundled herself in every blanket she owned, and set out at first light. The road climbed steadily into the high country, winding through stands of pine, heavy with snow. She'd told herself she was going to say thank you. Simple. Proper. What any decent person would do. But the truth was more complicated. Martha's words had lodged in her chest like a splinter. 4 years of living like a ghost. She knew that life. Had nearly surrendered to it herself after Samuel died. What had pulled her back? The children. Their need had given her purpose when grief threatened to swallow her whole. Maybe Elijah Cartwright needed the same thing. Or maybe she was a fool on a fool's errand. The ranch house appeared suddenly rising from a curve in the road. 2 stories of white-painted wood, a wraparound porch windows that reflected the winter sky like blind eyes. Beautiful, and utterly lifeless. A man emerged from the barn as she approached. Weather-beaten, suspicious hand resting near the rifle on his hip. This is private property, ma'am. You lost... I'm looking for Mr. Cartwright. He ain't receiving visitors. My name is Hannah Mercer. I run Mercy House, the orphanage in town. Mr. Cartwright sent provisions. Don't know nothing about that. The wagon had his ironwork. The supplies came from Martha Dawson's store. Hannah held the man's gaze. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to say thank you. The man, this must be Dutch, the foreman Martha had mentioned, shifted uncomfortably. Look, ma'am, I understand wanting to show gratitude, but the boss, he don't do well with people. Hasn't for years. You showing up here, it'll only... Dutch. The voice came from the porch, deep rough, carrying the rust of disuse. Hannah turned. Elijah Cartwright stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, perhaps 50 years old. His face might have been handsome once, before grief carved lines around his mouth and emptied his eyes of light. He stared at her like she was an apparition, something impossible that had materialized from the winter air. Mr. Cartwright. She climbed down from the wagon before he could tell her to leave. I'm Hannah Mercer. I know who you are. That surprised her. You do. Small Valley. Word travels. He didn't move from the doorway. Didn't come closer. You shouldn't be here. I know, but I couldn't accept what you gave without offering thanks. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. Or fear. It was nothing. It was everything. Hannah took a step toward the porch. 18 children had Thanksgiving because of you. 18 children who thought God had forgotten them woke up to abundance. That's not nothing, Mr. Cartwright. That's a miracle. I don't believe in miracles. Then believe in what you did. Believe in your own hands loading that wagon. Your own heart deciding those children mattered. His jaw tightened. Mrs. Mercer, the children want to thank you themselves. They want you to come for Christmas dinner. No. Just a meal. Just... I said no. His voice cracked like ice. You got your provisions. You said your thanks. Now please leave. Hannah should have backed down. Should have accepted the dismissal and retreated to her wagon. Instead, she climbed the porch steps. Dutch made a noise of protest. Elijah's eyes went wide with something like panic. What are you? I'm a widow, Mr. Cartwright. She stopped 3 feet from him, close enough to see the gray threading through his dark hair, the shadows beneath his eyes. My husband died 3 years ago. The same epidemic that orphaned half the children in my care took him from me. He said nothing, but he didn't retreat. For a year after, I didn't want to live. I woke up every morning and wondered why God had left me here when Samuel was gone. I stopped eating, stopped caring, stopped everything. Mrs. Mercer, the children saved me. Not because I was strong enough to help them, because I was weak enough to need them. Her voice softened. I know what it's like to live in an empty house, Mr. Cartwright. I know what it's like to wake up and realize you've spent another day just existing, not living, just getting through. His throat worked. He looked away toward the hill behind the house where two small graves lay beneath the snow. You don't know anything about me. I know you filled a wagon with love and left it in the darkness because you were too afraid to stay and receive thanks. I know you've been hiding up here for 4 years, punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. She paused. I know your wife's name was Clara, and your son was Benjamin. His whole body flinched. Martha told me, Hannah said gently. She was Clara's friend. She said your wife was the sweetest woman in the valley. She said you used to laugh. That man is dead. No, he's just lost. She reached out slowly, carefully, and touched his sleeve. The door to Mercy House is always open, Mr. Cartwright. Not because we need your charity, because everyone deserves somewhere to belong. He stared at her hand on his arm. His breath came rough and uneven. Please go. Hannah withdrew her hand and stepped back. I'll go, but I'll be back. She descended the steps. Grief isn't a room to live in, Mr. Cartwright. It's a road to walk through, and sometimes we need someone to walk beside us. She climbed into her wagon without looking back. Dutch stood frozen by the barn, his face a mask of shock. Ma'am, he called after her, you're either the bravest woman in Wyoming or the craziest. Can't it be both? She drove away into the winter afternoon, and if tears froze on her cheeks before she reached the valley floor, well, that was between her and the cold. Elijah watched the wagon disappear down the mountain road. His hands were shaking. His chest felt cracked open, all the careful walls he'd built suddenly full of holes. I know what it's like to wake up and realize you've spent another day just existing. She knew. This stranger with the gentle eyes and the stubborn chin, she actually knew. Dutch climbed the porch steps. Boss, you all right? No. That was something else. Never seen anyone talk to you like that. Neither have I. They stood in silence as the last of the wagon's dust settled. She's right, you know. Dutch's voice was careful. About the existing thing, Clara would have... Don't. Elijah's voice came out ragged. Don't tell me what Clara would have wanted. Fine, but you're gonna have to tell yourself eventually. Dutch walked back to the barn, leaving Elijah alone on the porch. The winter wind cut through his shirt. He barely felt it. Grief isn't a room to live in. It's a road to walk through. He turned and walked into the empty house. The silence swallowed him whole. But for the first time in 4 years, the silence felt less like a comfort and more like a cage. That night, Elijah couldn't sleep. He wandered the house like a ghost, touching furniture Clara had chosen, standing in doorways of rooms meant for children who never came. The nursery door was closed. Had been closed since the night Benjamin died. His hand rested on the knob. He couldn't make himself turn it. Everyone deserves somewhere to belong. Where did he belong? In this mausoleum he'd built, in the grave on the hill. He found himself in his workshop before he realized he'd walked there. The forge stood cold and dark. He hadn't lit it in years, but his workbench waited covered in dust. His hands remembered what his heart had forgotten. He picked up a piece of wood, ran his thumb along the grain, and began to carve. At Mercy House, Hannah tucked the children into bed one by one. Did you really go to the ghost ranch? Rosie asked, eyes wide. Cartwright Station isn't haunted, Rosie. Everybody says it is. Everybody says the rancher died when his wife died and now his ghost walks around looking for her. He's not a ghost. He's just a sad man who's been alone too long. Did you see him? I did. What's he like? Hannah thought of Elijah Cartwright's haunted eyes, the way he'd flinched when she said his wife's name, the barely contained terror when she'd touched his arm. He's like a house with all the curtains drawn, she said finally. Dark inside. But the lights are still there. Someone just needs to help him open the windows. Rosie considered this with 8-year-old solemnity. I could open windows. I'm good at reaching things. I know you are, sweetheart. Now sleep. She moved to the next bed. Little Thomas lay curled on his side, thumb in his mouth, eyes tracking her movement. Good night, Thomas. He didn't answer. He never did. But his free hand reached out and touched her sleeve, the same gesture she'd used with Elijah that afternoon. Hannah's throat tightened. I know, she whispered. I miss them too. She kissed his forehead and moved on, unaware that in a workshop miles away, a broken man was carving a wooden horse, sized for a child's hand, the first thing he'd made in 4 years, that wasn't designed to keep the world out. December arrived with a vengeance, and Elijah hadn't slept properly in 2 weeks. Every night, he found himself in the workshop. Every morning, another carved figure sat on his bench. Horses, a cow, a small dog with floppy ears. His hands remembered what his heart kept trying to forget. You're gonna work yourself into the ground. Dutch stood in the workshop doorway, arms crossed. Mind your business. You are my business boss. Have been for 15 years. Dutch walked closer, picked up one of the horses. These are good, real good. Who they for? Nobody. Liar. Elijah's hands stilled on the wood. What do you want, Dutch? Came to tell you we're running low on feed. Need to make a supply run to town. Then make it. Thought maybe you'd want to go yourself this time. Why the hell would I want that? Dutch set the horse down carefully. Because you've been staring at that road every day since the widow came. Because you carved enough toys for an army of kids. Because whatever she said to you cracked something open and pretending otherwise ain't working. Elijah stood so fast his chair clattered backward. Get out. She invited you to Christmas dinner. I said get out. Clara would have wanted you to go. The punch came from somewhere primal. Dutch caught Elijah's fist an inch from his jaw, his grip iron-strong despite his age. Feel better. Elijah sagged. All the fight drained out of him in a single breath. No. Didn't think so. Dutch released his hand. I knew Clara too, remember. Knew her before you did. And I'm telling you right now, that woman would haunt you proper if she saw what you've become. She already does. Elijah's voice cracked. Every goddamn night. Dutch was quiet for a long moment. Then maybe it's time to give her something different to see. He left without another word. Elijah stood alone in the workshop, surrounded by wooden toys meant for children he was too afraid to face. His eyes fell on the smallest carving, a little girl with jointed arms and a painted smile. Clara had wanted a daughter, had talked about it endlessly during those hopeful years. I want a little girl with your eyes, Eli. We'll name her Rose. He picked up the doll and held it against his chest. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. I don't know how to be around people anymore. The doll offered no answers. It never would. But somewhere down in the valley, 18 children were getting ready for Christmas, and one stubborn widow had looked at him like he was worth saving. Maybe that was answer enough. The next morning, Elijah loaded his wagon and drove to town. Martha Dawson nearly dropped her coffee pot when he walked through her door. Elijah Cartwright, as I live and breathe. Martha, 4 years. 4 years I've been selling supplies to Dutch, and now you walk in here like it's nothing. It's not nothing. He pulled off his hat, turned it in his hands. I need to ask you something. Well, this ought to be good. Go on then. Hannah Mercer. The name felt strange on his tongue. What do you know about her? Martha's expression shifted, knowing, almost smug. Why do you want to know? She came to my ranch, said things. He couldn't finish the sentence. Sit down, Eli. I'll pour you some coffee and tell you about the bravest woman in Elkhorn Valley. Elijah sat, and Martha talked. She told him about Samuel Mercer, the doctor who'd worked himself to death during the epidemic, who'd saved dozens of lives before the fever took his own. She told him about Hannah's collapse afterward, how she'd stopped eating, stopped speaking, stopped everything. They found her in the church one morning, Martha said quietly. Hadn't moved all night, just sitting there staring at nothing. Reverend Cole thought she might not come back from wherever she'd gone. What changed? The children. The ones Samuel couldn't save, their parents died too. Someone had to take care of them. Hannah just stood up one day, walked over to Mercy House, started mothering 18 broken children like her own heart wasn't shattered to pieces. Elijah's coffee sat untouched, going cold. She never remarried. Who's got time for courting when you're raising that many young'uns? Martha leaned forward. Why you interested? I'm not, that's not why I... Eli. Her voice gentled. That woman walked into your fortress and told you the truth nobody else has the guts to say. That's not nothing. That's not something you should run from. I'm not running. Then what are you doing here? He didn't have an answer. Martha reached under the counter and pulled out a worn piece of paper. The children made this. Christmas list for Mercy House. Hannah brings it by every year, knowing full well she can't afford half of it. Breaks my heart every time. Elijah took the paper. The handwriting was messy, childish. A real doll. Books with pictures. A horse of my own. Something for Mrs. Mercer because she never gets anything. That last one was written in careful letters. Different handwriting than the rest. Who wrote this? Caleb, the oldest boy. His pa used to work your ranch, you know, before the sickness took him. Elijah's blood went cold. John Morrison's boy. The same. Been at Mercy House 3 years now. John Morrison. Elijah remembered him, good man, hard worker. Had died in the first wave of fever, leaving behind a wife and son. The wife followed 2 weeks later, and Caleb had ended up in an orphanage, dreaming of horses on a ranch where his father once worked. I didn't know. Elijah's voice came out strangled. I didn't know he was there. You didn't know a lot of things. That's what happens when you lock yourself away. Martha's tone wasn't cruel, just honest. Question is, what are you going to do about it now? Elijah stared at the list until the words blurred. Something for Mrs. Mercer because she never gets anything. I need supplies, he said finally. Everything on this list, and something else besides. Martha smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her in 4 years. Now we're talking. The next 2 weeks passed in a fever of activity. Elijah worked from dawn to midnight. He carved toys until his hands cramped, then carved more. He built a rocking chair from scratch, good oak smooth joints, sized for a woman who spent her days caring for everyone except herself. Dutch watched him transform with something between wonder and concern. You're gonna burn yourself out, boss. Then I'll burn. This ain't healthy. Neither was the last 4 years. Dutch couldn't argue with that. On the third night, Elijah finally opened the nursery door. He stood in the threshold for a long time, just breathing. The room smelled of dust and old dreams. The cradle Clara had commissioned sat empty by the window. A mobile of wooden stars hung motionless overhead. He'd made those stars. Spent hours carving each point, sanding each edge smooth. Benjamin had looked at them for 3 hours before his tiny heart stopped. Elijah walked to the cradle and gripped its edge. I'm sorry, he whispered to his son. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I've been hiding instead of living. I'm sorry. His voice broke. The sobs came from somewhere deep and ancient, a grief he'd been choking on for 4 years. He sank to his knees beside the cradle and wept. When the tears finally stopped, something had shifted. The room didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It felt like a memory. Painful, yes, but no longer suffocating. He touched the cradle one last time. "Your mama wanted me to fill this house with children," he said quietly. "I couldn't give her that. But maybe I can give those children something else." He left the door open when he walked out. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. Elijah loaded his wagon in the pre-dawn darkness. Dutch helped without comment, though his eyebrows climbed higher with each addition. "That's a lot of gifts, boss. One for every child, and something for Mrs. Mercer. The rocking chair, among other things." Dutch secured the last rope and straightened. "You want company?" "No. This is something I need to do alone." "You gonna stay this time for the dinner?" Elijah's hands tightened on the reins. "I don't know." "Well, for what it's worth, I think you should. I think Clara would want you to. And I think those kids deserve to meet the man who's been playing guardian angel from the shadows. I'm no angel. No. You're better. You're a man who's trying." Dutch stepped back. "That counts for something, Eli. That counts for a hell of a lot." The ride down the mountain felt endless and too short all at once. Elijah's heart hammered with every mile. What was he doing? What did he think would happen? He'd drop off the gifts, say something awkward, and run back to his empty house like the coward he was. But the children's list burned in his pocket. Something for Mrs. Mercer because she never gets anything. He had to try. Even if he failed. Even if he made a fool of himself. He had to try. Mercy House appeared through the morning fog smoke curling from its chimney. Elijah pulled the wagon to a stop and sat frozen, unable to make himself move. The front door opened. Hannah Mercer stepped onto the porch wrapped in a heavy shawl. She saw the wagon. Saw him. She didn't look surprised. "Mr. Cartwright." She walked down the steps, her breath clouding in the cold air. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Neither was I." "But you're here." "I'm here." She stopped a few feet from the wagon, her eyes taking in the mound of gifts beneath the canvas. "What is all this Christmas?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. "For the children. I thought—" Words failed him. 4 years of silence had rusted his ability to communicate. Hannah climbed up to the wagon seat beside him. He froze suddenly, aware of how close she sat, how her eyes seemed to see straight through his defenses. "Show me." He pulled back the canvas. Hannah's hand flew to her mouth. Toys, dozens of them. Carved horses and dogs and dolls, each one unique. Each one made with obvious care. Warm blankets, books with bright covers, a sled built for several children to ride together. And there, nestled among everything else, a rocking chair made of golden oak. "You made all of this? I couldn't sleep." "Eli." She caught herself. "Mr. Cartwright." "Eli is fine." He stared at his hands. "Nobody's called me that in years." "Eli." She said it soft, testing the weight of it. "This is too much. We can't accept—" "You can. You will." He finally looked at her. "I spent 4 years building nothing. Let me build something that matters." Hannah's eyes glistened. She blinked hard. "The children are they'll be so— I need to tell you something." The words came out before he could stop them. "John Morrison. He worked my ranch. His boy Caleb I didn't know. I didn't know he was here. If I'd known, I would have—" "You would have what?" The question hung between them. "I don't know," Eli admitted. "Done something. Anything. Instead of hiding like a damn coward while John's son grew up in an orphanage." Hannah was quiet for a long moment. "Caleb talks about your ranch sometimes," she said finally. "His father used to bring him up on weekends, let him help with the horses. Caleb says those were the happiest days of his life." Eli's chest constricted. He could have those days again. I could teach him if he wanted. I've got horses that need training and... Are you offering Caleb a job? I'm offering him a place, same as his father had. Eli's voice steadied. Same as any of those children who want it. There's room at the ranch. There's always been room. I just forgot how to share it. Hannah stared at him for so long he started to squirm. What? I'm trying to figure out if you're real, she said, or if I fell asleep and dreamed a Christmas miracle. I'm real. Damaged and difficult and probably terrible company, but real. A smile broke across her face, the first genuine smile he'd seen since Clara died. It hit him like a punch to the chest. Then come inside, Eli Cartwright. Come meet the children you've been too afraid to face. He should say no. Should make an excuse, leave the gifts, flee back to his fortress of solitude. Instead, he climbed down from the wagon and let Hannah lead him to the door. The moment he stepped inside, chaos erupted. He's here! The wagon man is here! Children swarmed from every direction. Small hands grabbed at his coat. High voices peppered him with questions. Did you really make the toys? What's your horse's name? Are you staying for dinner? Why don't you ever come to town? Eli stood paralyzed, overwhelmed by the noise and motion and life. A small hand slipped into his. He looked down. A little boy with dark hair and enormous eyes stared up at him. The child didn't speak, just held on with quiet intensity. That's Thomas, Hannah said softly. He doesn't talk. Hasn't since his parents died. Thomas tugged at Eli's hand, pulling him toward the main room. I think he wants to show you something, Hannah said. Eli let himself be led. Thomas stopped in front of a small shelf where a carved horse stood, one of the toys Eli had left on Thanksgiving. The boy picked it up and held it against his chest, then looked at Eli with something like reverence. You kept it, Eli whispered. Thomas nodded. It's yours. I made it for... He stopped. For a child who would never exist. For Benjamin. For all the children Clara and I never had. Thomas reached up and touched Eli's face. His small fingers traced the lines around Eli's eyes, the grooves carved by grief. Then the boy did something that shattered every remaining wall. He raised his arms. The universal gesture. Pick me up. Hold me. Eli's knees nearly buckled. Go on, Hannah murmured. He's been waiting for someone safe enough to ask. Eli bent down and lifted Thomas into his arms. The boy weighed almost nothing, all hollow bones and fragile hope. He wrapped his arms around Eli's neck and held on like he was drowning. Something cracked open in Eli's chest. Something that had been frozen for 4 years. He held the silent boy and let tears run down his face without shame. The other children had gone quiet, watching, understanding in that way children do that something important was happening. Well, Caleb said finally, I guess he's staying for dinner. The room exhaled into laughter and motion. Children returned to their chaos, shooting glances at Eli, but giving him space. Hannah touched his arm. You all right? No. His voice came out wrecked. But I think I might be, eventually. Thomas fell asleep against Eli's shoulder. He didn't put the boy down for an hour. The Christmas Eve dinner was nothing like Eli expected. The food was simple, certainly nothing like the elaborate meals Clara used to plan. But the noise, the laughter, the warmth, it filled every corner of the cramped dining room. Eli sat at the head of the table because Rosie insisted, and no one argued with Rosie about anything. You're very old, she informed him between bites of ham. Are you older than Mrs. Mercer? Rosie. Hannah's cheeks flushed. It's a valid question. Eli found himself fighting a smile. I'm 52. How old is Mrs. Mercer? She won't tell us. She says a lady never reveals her age. That's because you'd calculate it wrong anyway, Hannah said dryly. And I'm 38 for the record. That's not that old, Rosie decided. My grandmother was 60 when she died. She was really old. Thank you for that comparison. Eli laughed. The sound startled him, rusty from disuse but real. Everyone at the table turned to stare. What? Nothing, Caleb said, but he was grinning. Just ain't never heard a ghost laugh before. I'm not a ghost. That's what a ghost would say. The table erupted in giggles. Eli looked at Hannah helplessly. She shrugged. You walked into this. Apparently. After dinner, Eli helped Hannah wash dishes while the children tore into their gifts in the other room. Screams of delight echoed through the thin walls. You didn't have to do all this, Hannah said quietly. The toys, the food, that a rocking chair I saw. It was. Eli, you never get anything. He scrubbed a plate with unnecessary force. The children's list. Caleb wrote that you never get anything for Christmas because you give everything away. I couldn't. He stopped. Everyone deserves to be seen, Hannah. Even people who spend their lives making sure everyone else is taken care of. She was silent so long, he risked a glance at her. Hannah stood motionless, dish towel pressed to her chest, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. Panic seized him. I didn't mean to. Was that wrong? I shouldn't have. Stop. She held up a hand. Stop apologizing. You just... She laughed, watery and broken. You just made me feel like I matter. Do you know how long it's been since anyone... 3 years, he finished. Since your husband died. Yes. I know that number. He set down the plate. I know what it's like to count the days since you mattered to anyone. They stood in the small kitchen, two broken people, recognizing pieces of themselves in each other. I should go, Eli said finally. It's late. The children need sleep. You could stay. What? The barn has space. It's too cold to ride back tonight and... Hannah's voice faltered. The children would love to see you in the morning, when they wake up with their gifts. I couldn't impose. You've given us more than we can ever repay, Eli. Let us give you one night of not being alone. The offer hung between them. Terrifying. Tempting. The barn. I'll bring you blankets. Eli nodded slowly. All right. One night. Hannah's smile was worth every moment of fear. He slept better in that drafty barn than he had in 4 years in his empty mansion. Christmas morning exploded with the sound of children discovering their gifts. Eli emerged from the barn to find Thomas waiting for him on the porch, clutching his carved horse. The boy grabbed his hand and pulled him inside without ceremony. The scene that greeted him stole his breath. Children everywhere surrounded by toys and torn paper and absolute joy. Caleb sat in the corner with a real leather bridle one Eli had added at the last minute, turning it over in his hands with reverent amazement. This is real, the boy said when Eli approached. This is actual ranching gear. It was your father's. I kept it after... Eli cleared his throat. Dutch found it in the tack room. Thought you should have it. Caleb's face crumpled. He pressed the bridle to his chest. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, Mr. Cartwright. Eli, and you're welcome, son. Hannah appeared at his elbow. There's coffee, and something you need to see. She led him to the main room, where Rosie stood beside the rocking chair, vibrating with impatience. Mrs. Mercer won't sit in it until you tell her she has to. Is that so? She says it's too fine for her, but that's stupid because you made it for her specifically, and it would be rude not to sit in it. Eli looked at Hannah. The child has a point. The child needs to learn manners. Manners are boring, Rosie announced. Sit down already. Hannah sat. The chair fit her perfectly. Eli had measured it against the old one in the church, hoping he'd gotten the proportions right. She rocked gently, her eyes closing. Oh, she breathed. This is too fine. Perfect. She opened her eyes. It's perfect, Eli. Something passed between them. Understanding. Promise. The beginning of something neither was ready to name. Merry Christmas, Hannah. Merry Christmas, Eli. Thomas climbed into her lap, still clutching his horse. He looked at Eli with those enormous dark eyes and smiled. It was the first time anyone had seen Thomas smile since his parents died. Hannah pressed her hand to her mouth. Caleb made a strangled sound. Even Rosie went quiet. Eli knelt beside the chair and touched the boy's hair. Merry Christmas, Thomas. The child leaned forward and pressed a kiss to Eli's weathered cheek. And in that moment, surrounded by noise and chaos and 18 children who needed homes and one woman who needed to be seen, Eli Cartwright felt something he thought had died with Clara. Hope. The weeks after Christmas changed everything. Eli rode down from Cartwright Station every Sunday, then every other day. Then, before he fully understood how it happened, he was at Mercy House more often than his own ranch. "You're gonna wear a groove in that road," Dutch observed one January morning. "Mind your business." "Just saying. Man rides 4 hours round trip to see a bunch of kids, people start to talk." "Let them talk," Dutch grinned. "Wouldn't be just the kids you're going to see, would it?" Eli didn't dignify that with an answer. The truth was more complicated than Dutch knew. Yes, he went for the children. For Caleb, who soaked up ranching knowledge like parched earth drinking rain. For Thomas, who still didn't speak, but followed Eli everywhere with those enormous eyes. For Rosie, who asked impossible questions that somehow made him laugh. But he also went for Hannah. For the way she looked at him, like he was worth something. For the conversations after the children went to bed, sitting on her porch in the freezing cold, talking about everything and nothing. For the way she made him feel alive. "You're thinking about her again?" Eli startled. Caleb sat on the fence rail beside him, watching the horses in the corral. "Thinking about a lot of things. Mrs. Mercer smiles more when you're around. She thinks we don't notice, but we do." "Is that so?" "Rosie says you're courting her." "I told her that's stupid because you're old, and Mrs. Mercer would never—" "Thank you for that assessment." Caleb flushed. "I didn't mean it's just, you are pretty old." "I'm aware." The boy was quiet for a moment, then softer. "My pa used to say, age don't matter when hearts fit together. He was 10 years older than my ma." Eli's chest tightened. "Your father was a wise man." "He was the best man I ever knew." Caleb's voice wavered. "Until you." The words hit Eli like a physical blow. He gripped the fence rail to steady himself. "Caleb, I know you ain't trying to replace him. I'm not stupid, but—" The boy wiped his nose roughly. "You teach me things like he did. You talk to me like I matter. You showed up, Mr. Cartwright. Nobody else did, just you." Eli didn't trust himself to speak. He reached out and gripped Caleb's shoulder, and the boy leaned into the touch like he'd been starving for it. "Your father would be proud of you," Eli managed finally. "The man you're becoming." "You think so?" "I know so." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the horses move through the morning light. "So," Caleb said eventually, "are you gonna court her or not?" "That's none of your concern." "I'll take that as a yes." Eli didn't argue. February brought the worst blizzard in 20 years. Eli was trapped at Mercy House for 3 days, unable to make it back up the mountain. He told himself it was an inconvenience. The warmth spreading through his chest said otherwise. "You could have the spare room." Hannah offered the first night. "It's not much, but it's warmer than the barn." "The barn's fine." Eli. "People already talk, Hannah. I won't give them more ammunition." Her expression flickered. "Since when do you care what people say? Since it might hurt you." The words hung between them. Hannah's cheeks flushed, and she looked away. "Martha told me about the rumors," she said quietly. "The widow and the hermit. That's what they're calling us." "Charming." "Some folks say I'm only being kind to you for your money, that I'm scheming to get my hands on Cartwright Station." Anger flared hot in Eli's chest. That's ridiculous. You never asked me for a single thing. I know, but rumors don't need truth to spread. She finally met his eyes. Does it bother you? What they say? Does it bother you? I asked first. Eli stepped closer. Close enough to see the fine lines around her eyes, the silver threading through her brown hair. Close enough to count her breaths. I stopped caring about other people's opinions 4 years ago, he said slowly. What I care about is you, your reputation, your safety. These children need you, Hannah. I won't let my presence put any of that at risk. And if I said your presence is the best thing that's happened to this place in years, then I'd say you're too generous. I'd say I'm honest. They stood inches apart. Eli's heart hammered against his ribs. Hannah. Pa. They sprang apart. Thomas stood in the doorway clutching his carved horse. His dark eyes moved between them with unsettling perception. What did you just say? Hannah's voice trembled. Thomas pointed at Eli. Pa. The first word Thomas had spoken in over a year, echoed in the silence. Eli's knees buckled. He caught himself on the doorframe, barely breathing. Thomas. Hannah knelt beside the boy. Sweetheart, Mr. Cartwright he's not your pa. Thomas shook his head stubbornly. He walked to Eli and raised his arms. The universal gesture. Pick me up. Hold me. Eli lifted him automatically. Thomas pressed his face into Eli's neck and held on tight. Pa, he whispered again. Stay. Eli looked at Hannah over the boy's head. She had tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to... His voice broke. I can't. You already are, Hannah whispered. Whether you meant to or not, you're already what he needs. The blizzard raged outside. Inside, Eli held a child who'd claimed him as father and felt the last of his walls crumble to dust. The storm broke on the third day. Eli should have left immediately. Should have put distance between himself and the terrifying hope building in his chest. Instead, he stayed for breakfast. Then lunch. Then helped Caleb with his riding lessons in the muddy yard. You're stalling, Dutch observed when he finally arrived to check on his boss. Gonna have to face that empty house eventually. I know. Unless you're thinking about not going back at all. Eli didn't answer. Dutch nodded slowly. That's what I figured. About time. I haven't decided anything. Sure you haven't. That's why you're teaching those boys to ride and building furniture for a woman you barely look at without blushing. I don't blush. You're blushing right now. Eli turned away to hide his face. Dutch laughed a rare sound. Go talk to her. Tell her whatever you're afraid to say. Life's too short for cowardice, Eli. Clara knew that. Time you learned it too. You knew Clara. Known her since she was 16 and too stubborn for her own good. Dutch's voice softened. She'd like Hannah. Would have called her a kindred spirit. Strong women who don't take nonsense from difficult men. Clara never took nonsense from anyone. Neither does your widow. So stop dancing around and tell her what she already knows. What's that? Dutch gave him a look that said he was being deliberately obtuse. That you love her. That these children need a father. That there's a big empty ranch up that mountain waiting to be filled with life. He clapped Eli's shoulder. Don't overthink it. Just show up and stay. That's all love really is. Eli found Hannah in the kitchen preparing dinner. Children are settled for now, she said without turning. Thomas is napping. Rosie's reading to the little ones. Hannah. Something in his voice made her stop. She turned flour, dusting her hands. What is it? I need to tell you something. All right. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, stopped close enough to see her pulse jumping in her throat. 4 years ago, I buried my wife and son on the same day. I decided I'd never feel anything again. Easier that way. Safer. Eli. Let me finish. He took a breath. Then you showed up at my door and told me grief wasn't a room to live in. You looked at me like I was worth saving. And those children, they climbed into my heart before I knew what was happening. Hannah's eyes glistened. She waited. I don't know how to do this, Eli continued. I don't know how to be a husband or a father. I failed at both before. Clara died because I couldn't save her. Benjamin died because God or fate or whatever runs this world decided I didn't deserve happiness. That's not... But I'm tired of being afraid. His voice cracked. I'm tired of that empty house. I'm tired of pretending I don't feel things when I feel everything so much it terrifies me. He reached out and cupped her face in his work-roughened hands. I love you, Hannah Mercer. I love your stubborn chin and your gentle heart, and the way you mother those children like they're your own blood. I love that you walked into my fortress and demanded I start living again. I love... She kissed him. The world stopped. 4 years of isolation, of frozen grief, of careful walls, all of it dissolved in the press of her lips against his. Eli's arms came around her. He held her like she was the only solid thing in a spinning universe. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Hannah laughed bright and surprised and beautiful. I was starting to think you'd never say it. I'm not good with words. You're better than you think. She pressed her forehead to his. I love you too, Eli. Have for months now. Since you stood on your porch looking terrified and let me yell at you anyway. You didn't yell. I wanted to. He laughed. The sound still surprised him. So what now? He asked. Now you stop running. Now we figure out how to build something together. She pulled back to look at him. These children need a home, a real one, with a mother and a father and land to grow up on. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to consider it, when you're ready, when the time is right. What if I said I'm ready now? Hannah's breath caught. Are you? Eli thought about the empty house on the mountain, the graves on the hill, the silence that had been his only companion for 4 years. Then he thought about Thomas calling him Pa, about Caleb learning to ride, about Rosie's impossible questions, and Hannah's gentle hands, and the way laughter felt in his chest after so long without it. I'm ready, he said. I've been ready since you sat in that rocking chair and looked at me like I'd given you something precious. You had. You do. Every single day. Then let's stop waiting. He took her hands. Marry me, Hannah. Let me give those children a home. Let me give you. Yes. You didn't let me finish. I didn't need to. She was crying now, but smiling through the tears. Yes, Eli. Yes to all of it. He kissed her again, and the empty spaces in his heart began to fill. Mr. Cartwright and Mrs. Mercer are kissing. Rosie's voice exploded from the doorway. Within seconds, children poured into the kitchen, chattering and pointing and asking questions. Are you getting married? Does this mean we get to live at the ranch? Can I have my own horse? Hannah pulled away laughing. Children, please. Yes, Eli said loudly. Everyone went quiet. Yes, we're getting married. Yes, you're coming to live at the ranch. And yes, Rosie, you can have your own horse. The chaos that erupted defied description. Caleb stood apart from the celebration, watching Eli with unreadable eyes. Eli extracted himself from the swarm of excited children and walked over. You all right, son? Are you sure? Caleb's voice was low. This is a lot. 18 kids. You've been alone for years. I'm sure. What if you change your mind? What if it gets too hard and you leave? Eli crouched to meet the boy's eyes. Caleb, I spent 4 years running from everything that mattered. I built walls so high I couldn't see the sun. You know what I learned? What? Walls don't protect you. They just make sure you die alone. He gripped Caleb's shoulder. I'm not going anywhere. Not from Hannah. Not from you. Not from any of these children. This is my family now. You're my family. And I don't abandon family. Caleb's composure cracked. He threw his arms around Eli's neck and held on tight. Promise. I promise. Like a real promise, not one adult's make and break. Like a blood oath. Eli held him close. You're stuck with me now, son. Better get used to it. Caleb laughed wetly against his shoulder. I guess I can live with that. The news spread through Elkhorn Valley like wildfire. Eli expected gossip. He didn't expect the delegation that arrived at Mercy House 3 days later. Mayor Harlan Cobb, Reverend Cole, and Mrs. Patricia Whitmore, the wealthiest widow in the county, and the closest thing Elkhorn Valley had to society. Mr. Cartwright. The mayor's smile didn't reach his eyes. We heard the news. Good news travels fast. We came to offer our concerns. Hannah appeared in the doorway. Mayor Cobb, what brings you here? Official business. Mrs. Mercer, perhaps we could speak inside. The conversation in the parlor started civil and deteriorated quickly. The situation is irregular, Mrs. Whitmore declared. An unmarried woman alone with a man in this house. I stayed in the barn, Eli interrupted. During the blizzard, nothing improper occurred. That's not what people are saying. People say a lot of things that aren't true. Mayor Cobb held up a placating hand. The issue, Mr. Cartwright, is the children. Mercy House operates under a charter. That charter requires proper oversight. There are questions about whether Mrs. Mercer is suitable to continue as headmistress. Hannah went white. Excuse me. Your judgment has been called into question. This entanglement with Mr. Cartwright. We're engaged, Hannah said flatly. Is engagement suddenly improper? The speed of it is concerning. The appearance of impropriety. Let me be clear. Eli stood, and something in his posture made the mayor lean back. Hannah Mercer has given 3 years of her life to these children. She's fed them, clothed them, loved them, when nobody else would, and you're questioning her suitability because she's going to marry me. The church board has concerns. Then the church board can take those concerns and— Eli. Hannah's hand on his arm stopped him. Let them finish. Reverend Cole spoke for the first time. The board has scheduled a review. 1 month from now. If the situation is deemed inappropriate, the children will be relocated to the Territorial Orphanage in Cheyenne. You can't do that, Hannah's voice shook. These children have a home here, roots, family. The decision isn't mine alone, Mrs. Whitmore sniffed. Perhaps if you'd been more discreet. Discreet. Eli's voice went dangerously quiet. I gave provisions when those children were starving. I gave gifts when they had nothing. I gave my time, my heart, my future. And you're telling me I should have been discreet about it. Mr. Cartwright. No, you listen to me. He stepped forward. I spent 4 years grieving alone because people like you decided my pain should be private, because showing emotion was somehow shameful. Well, I'm done with that. I love this woman. I love these children, and I will marry her and adopt every single one of them, and there's nothing your board or your charter or your narrow little minds can do to stop me. The silence stretched. Mayor Cobb cleared his throat. The review will proceed as scheduled. 1 month. I suggest you use that time to formalize your arrangements. They left without another word. Hannah sank into a chair trembling. They can't really take the children, can they? Over my dead body. Eli, if the board decides, then we'll fight. We'll petition the territorial government. We'll go to every newspaper that'll listen. He knelt beside her. Hannah, I didn't survive 4 years of darkness to lose everything now. Whatever it takes, we protect this family. She gripped his hands. Whatever it takes. Caleb appeared in the doorway. His face was pale. I heard. They want to send us to Cheyenne. No one's sending anyone anywhere, Eli said firmly. But if they— Caleb. Eli stood and faced the boy. Do you remember what I promised? That you wouldn't leave. That's right, and I meant it. This is our family. No committee, no board, no narrow-minded busybodies are going to tear it apart. He put his hand on Caleb's shoulder. We're going to get married. I'm going to adopt you, all of you, legally, and then let them try to take you from your own father. Caleb's eyes widened. You'd really do that, adopt us? Every single one. Eli looked at Hannah. If you'll have me. She stood and walked to them, placing one hand on Eli's chest and one on Caleb's shoulder. I think, she said softly, that we've been a family for a while now. We just need to make it official. That night, after the children were asleep, Eli rode back to Cartwright Station alone. He had one more thing to face. The nursery door stood open. He'd left it that way after Christmas, but he hadn't been back inside since. Now he walked in and stood before the cradle. I'm getting married again, he said to the empty room. To a woman named Hannah. She's stubborn and strong, and she looks at me like I'm not broken. The mobile of wooden stars swayed slightly, though there was no wind. We're adopting 18 children. Can you imagine 18? This house is going to be so loud, Clara. You would have loved it. He touched the cradle's edge. I thought I'd never feel anything again. I thought when you and Benjamin died, all the good parts of me died too. But I was wrong. His voice broke. You were right, Clara. You were right about everything. Love trapped inside turns to poison. Love given away becomes medicine. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Clara's journal. He'd been carrying it since he found it unable to read more than that last entry. Now, he turned to a page near the middle. If something happens to me, I want Eli to know this grief is not a betrayal of love. Living is not a betrayal. Finding joy again is not forgetting. It's honoring. It's carrying forward. I don't want him to build a monument to my memory. I want him to build a life. Whatever form that takes, whoever helps him build it. That's what I want for him. Eli closed the journal and pressed it to his heart. Thank you, he whispered, for knowing me better than I knew myself, for giving me permission I didn't know I needed. He placed the journal in the cradle, a final gift, a final goodbye. I'll bring the children to meet you, he said. All of them. They'll play on this hill, climb these trees. They'll know your name and Benjamin's name. You'll be part of this family too, Clara, always. He walked out of the nursery and closed the door gently behind him. Tomorrow he would start preparing the house for his new family. Tonight he would let himself grieve one last time. But for the first time in 4 years, the grief felt like healing instead of dying. The wedding was set for 3 weeks out. Eli wanted to wait, do it proper, give Hannah time to prepare. Hannah looked at him like he'd lost his mind. We have 1 month before the review, she said flatly. If we're married before then, if the adoption papers are filed, they have no grounds to question anything. That's not why I want to marry you. I know, but it's why we need to move fast. She was right. Eli hated that she was right. The paperwork alone nearly broke him. Marriage license, adoption petitions, property transfers. Eli had built a ranching empire with less documentation. 18 separate adoption filings, the territorial clerk said, eyebrows climbing. That's unprecedented, Mr. Cartwright. Is it illegal? No, but then file them. The clerk filed them. Dutch arrived at Cartwright Station 3 days later with a wagon full of supplies and a look of barely contained amusement. Heard you're getting hitched. News travels. Also heard you're adopting half the territory's orphans. 18. That's not half. Dutch grinned. Close enough. You need help getting this place ready for that many young'uns. I need help with everything. Good thing I brought reinforcements. Behind Dutch's wagon, 3 more appeared. Ranch hands Eli hadn't seen in months, their wives, their older children. They descended on Cartwright Station like a benevolent invasion. Clara would have wanted this, Dutch said quietly, watching the activity. Family everywhere. Noise and chaos and life. I know. You doing all right with that? Eli watched a young woman hang curtains in windows that hadn't seen light in 4 years. I'm getting there. The house transformed in a week. Dust covers disappeared. Rooms that had sat empty filled with beds, chairs, children's things. The long dining table Eli had avoided for years was scrubbed clean and surrounded by enough chairs for 20. But not everyone in Elkhorn Valley celebrated the changes. Mayor Cobb arrived unannounced on a Thursday afternoon. Mr. Cartwright. His smile was thin. Quite the renovation. Mayor, what do you want? Just a friendly visit, checking on the preparations. The wedding's in 2 weeks. The adoption papers are filed. Everything's legal. Legal, yes, but the board still has concerns. Eli set down his hammer. What concerns exactly? The children's welfare. Such a sudden change, ripping them from their home, moving them to an isolated ranch. Isolated, I've got 15 hands on this property. There'll be more people here than Mercy House ever saw. Still, questions are being raised. By who? The mayor's smile flickered. Concerned citizens. Name them. I'm not at liberty. Mrs. Whitmore. Eli's voice went cold. She's been whispering in ears since the day we announced. What's her stake in this? I don't know what you mean. The hell you don't. That woman's had a vendetta against Hannah since she arrived. I want to know why. Mayor Cobb straightened his coat. The review will proceed as scheduled, Mr. Cartwright. 2 weeks from tomorrow. I suggest you have your affairs in order. He left without answering the question. That night, Eli told Hannah about the visit. Patricia Whitmore. Hannah's voice was flat. Of course. You know why she hates you. I know she blames me for something that wasn't my fault. Which is? Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Then, her daughter, Emily. She was one of Samuel's patients during the epidemic. Eli's stomach dropped. She died. She survived, but her husband didn't. Patricia's son-in-law. Hannah's hands twisted in her lap. Emily blamed Samuel. Said he should have tried harder, done more. After Samuel died, the blame transferred to me. That's insane. Grief makes people insane. You know that better than most. Eli pulled her close. Whatever she's planning, we'll handle it. And if we can't, then we'll handle it anyway, together. The wedding day arrived cold and clear. Reverend Cole performed the ceremony in the small church with the children crowded into the front pews and half the valley watching from behind. Eli's hands shook as he spoke his vows. 4 years since he'd stood at an altar. 4 years since he'd promised forever to someone. But Hannah's eyes held his steady, and the words came easier than he expected. I take you as my wife. To protect, to cherish, to build a life with. I promise to show up every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Hannah's vows were simpler. I take you as you are, broken places and all. I promise to love what's here, not what might have been. I promise we'll face whatever comes together. When Reverend Cole pronounced them married, Thomas broke free from Caleb's grip and ran down the aisle. Papa married. Eli caught him and lifted him high. The boys' laughter rang through the church. That's right, son. Pa's married. We're a family now. The reception was chaos. Children everywhere, food on every surface, neighbors offering congratulations with varying degrees of sincerity. Eli endured handshakes and small talk with gritted teeth. You're doing fine, Hannah murmured, appearing at his elbow. I'm dying. That's what weddings feel like. How much longer? Another hour at least. I won't survive. You survived 4 years of isolation. You can survive a party. He laughed despite himself. Hannah smiled, and the noise around them faded to nothing. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For saving my life, for giving me a reason to come home. Her eyes glistened. Thank you for being worth saving. The moment shattered when Martha appeared, face grim. We have a problem. They found Caleb behind the church, bleeding from a split lip. Two boys his age stood over him, the Whitmore grandsons Eli realized. Patricia's family. "Say it again," one of them snarled. "Say your new daddy ain't a murderer." Eli saw red. He crossed the yard in 3 strides and grabbed the nearest boy by the collar. "What did you just say?" "Let go of me." "I said, what did you say?" The boy's brother stepped back, face pale. "Our grandmother told us. About your wife. How she died because you didn't call the doctor fast enough. How you let her bleed to death while you—" Eli released the first boy so suddenly he stumbled. "Get out of here, both of you, and tell your grandmother if she has something to say to me, she can say it to my face." The boys ran. Caleb wiped blood from his chin. "Is it true what they said? Caleb, is it true?" Eli knelt in the frozen grass. His wedding day, and he was about to tell a 12-year-old the worst thing that ever happened to him. "Clara went into labor early," he said quietly. "I sent for the doctor. He was hours away. By the time he arrived, she was already dead. The baby was stuck. There was bleeding. I tried to—" His voice broke. "I held her hand while she bled out. Couldn't do anything to stop it." Caleb stared at him for a long moment. "So you watched her die?" "Yes." "And you couldn't save her?" "No. Like I watched my parents die, and couldn't save them." Eli's heart cracked open. "Caleb, is that why you understand?" The boy's voice trembled. "Is that why you don't treat us like we're broken? Because you know what it feels like. I know exactly what it feels like, and I know it's not your fault. It wasn't mine either." Eli gripped the boy's shoulders. "But it took me 4 years to learn that. Don't make my mistake. Don't let guilt eat you alive." Caleb threw his arms around him. "I'm glad you married Mrs. Mercer. I'm glad we're going to be your kids." "Me too, son. Me too." The review board convened on a gray February morning. Eli sat in the front row of the town hall, Hannah beside him, children arrayed behind them like a small army. Martha had insisted on bringing every single one, including the babies. "Let them see what they're trying to tear apart," she'd said. Mayor Cobb called the meeting to order. The board members sat at a long table, the mayor, Reverend Cole, 2 town council members, and Patricia Whitmore. "We're here to review the suitability of the arrangement between Mr. Elijah Cartwright and Mrs. Hannah Cartwright, née Mercer, regarding the care of 18 minor children currently residing at Mercy House." "That's not accurate," Hannah said clearly. "The children are being adopted. The paperwork is filed." "Pending approval," Mrs. Whitmore interrupted, "which this board can influence." "On what grounds?" "Concerns about the household stability, Mr. Cartwright's history of isolation, the rapid nature of this marriage." "My history," Eli stood slowly, "is my business. And there's nothing rapid about loving someone enough to give them everything you have." "Pretty words. But what about the children's welfare?" "What about it?" Mrs. Whitmore pulled a paper from her stack. "I've compiled concerns from various citizens. Questions about Mr. Cartwright's mental state, his years of seclusion, whether a man who couldn't save his own wife and child is capable of caring for 18 others." The room went cold. "You have no right." Hannah's voice shook with fury. "You have no right to use his grief as a weapon. I have every right to protect innocent children. Protect them from what a man who fed them when they were starving, who gave them Christmas when they had nothing, who's opened his home. A man who let his wife die alone. That's enough." Everyone turned. Reverend Cole had risen from his seat. "Patricia, I've allowed this review out of obligation to the charter, but I will not allow you to slander a man based on rumors and old grudges." "This isn't about grudges." "Isn't it? Your son-in-law died in the epidemic. Samuel Mercer couldn't save him. That's tragedy, not negligence. He didn't try hard enough. He tried until it killed him." The Reverend's voice rang through the hall. "Samuel Mercer worked himself to death saving this town. His widow has spent 3 years caring for its orphans. And Elijah Cartwright, whatever his past, has done more for these children in 6 months than this board has done in years." Mrs. Whitmore's face went purple. "You're supposed to be impartial. I'm supposed to be just. There's a difference." Reverend Cole turned to the other board members. "I move to dismiss this review and approve the adoption petitions as filed." A council member seconded. The vote was 3-2. Mrs. Whitmore swept out without a word. Hannah collapsed against Eli, trembling. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "It's over. They can't take them. She'll try again. She won't stop." "Let her try. We won." Caleb appeared beside them. "Does this mean, are we really your kids now?" "You've always been our kids," Hannah said, wiping her eyes. "Now the law agrees." The ride back to Cartwright Station felt like a victory march. Children spilled out of wagons racing toward their new home with shrieks of excitement. Eli watched them scatter across the property, climbing fences, chasing chickens, claiming bedrooms. "They're going to destroy this place," Dutch observed. "Probably." "You're smiling." "Am I?" "First time in 4 years I've seen that expression. Looks good on you." That night, after the chaos settled, Eli walked to the hill behind the house. The graves sat quiet under a blanket of snow. Clara, Benjamin, 2 headstones marking everything he'd lost. He knelt between them. "They're here," he said softly. "All of them, running wild through the house you built, making noise in every room." He touched Clara's headstone. "You should hear them, Clara. Rosie asks questions that make my head spin. Thomas called me Pa again today twice. Caleb's teaching the younger boys to ride." The wind picked up cold and biting. "Hannah makes me laugh. Can you believe that she looks at me and I feel whole? Not fixed, not repaired, just whole." He wiped his eyes. "I miss you every day. I'll miss you until I die. But I'm not dying anymore. I'm living. Finally living." He stood and looked at the ranch house windows glowing warm against the night. "Thank you for letting me go. Thank you for showing me the way home." He walked down the hill toward the light. The first month of their new life tested everyone. 18 children in a house built for 2 meant constant chaos. Arguments over chores, squabbles over beds, a never-ending cycle of cooking, cleaning, and crisis management. "I don't know how you survived this at Mercy House," Eli said one night, collapsing into bed beside Hannah. "I didn't. I just kept moving until exhaustion knocked me out." "Is this sustainable? Ask me in a year." He pulled her close. "No regrets. 1,000, none that matter." Spring arrived with mud and new beginnings. Caleb officially started his apprenticeship, spending mornings with the ranch hands and afternoons with books. His transformation astonished everyone, the wary boy becoming a confident young man. "He's got his father's way with horses," Dutch said one afternoon, watching Caleb gentle a skittish mare. "John would be proud." "I hope so." "You're doing good, boss. Real good." Thomas started speaking more. Not much, a few words a day, but each one felt like a miracle. He followed Eli everywhere, small shadow in tiny boots. "Pa, look." He pointed at a robin building its nest. "Baby bird's coming." "That's right, son. New family." "Like us." Eli's chest tightened. "Just like us." Rosie predictably demanded answers to every question the universe had ever generated. Why do horses sleep standing up? Why is snow cold? Why did you name your ranch Cartwright Station when you could have named it something interesting? My grandfather built it, named it after the family. But Cartwright is boring. What would you name it? Rosie's Palace of Horses and Adventure. That's specific. I'm a specific person. She wasn't wrong. The adoption papers came through in April. Eli stood in the territorial office signing 18 separate documents while Hannah wept quietly beside him. That's the last one, the clerk said. Congratulations, Mr. Cartwright. You're officially a father of 18. Only 18 feels like more. The clerk didn't laugh. Back at the ranch, they gathered everyone in the big room. I have an announcement, Eli said. The children fell silent, a minor miracle. As of today, every single one of you is legally my child. No one can take you away. No one can split us up. You're Cartwrights now, all of you. For a moment, stunned silence. Then Rosie's voice cut through. Does this mean I get to inherit the ranch? You inherit a share, along with your 17 siblings. That's a lot of shares. It's a big ranch. The room erupted in cheers. Children tackled Eli in waves, nearly knocking him over. He caught Thomas and Rosie under each arm, laughing until his sides ached. Hannah stood apart, watching with tears streaming down her face. Hey! Eli extracted himself and went to her. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's what's wrong. She laughed at her own confusion. I spent 3 years praying for a miracle. I never imagined it would look like this. Like what? Like you. Like this family. Like everything I didn't know I needed. He kissed her forehead. Thank you for not giving up. On them. On me. I never give up on people who are trying. I'm trying every day. I know. I see it. They see it. She took his hand. Come on. Your children are waiting. They walked back to the chaos together. Summer brought the first real test of their new family. A fever swept through the younger children, 3 of them burning up crying through the night. Hannah and Eli took shifts, barely sleeping for a week. This is too familiar, Hannah whispered on the 5th night. The epidemic started like this. It's not the same. You don't know that. I know I'm not going to lose anyone, not again. He held her while she shook with fear. Then he went back to the sick room and sat with the children until dawn. The fever broke on day 7. All 3 recovered. Eli walked to Clara's grave that night. I did it, he told her. I kept them safe. I didn't run. I didn't hide. His voice cracked. I wish I could have done the same for you. The wind carried no answer, but he felt for the first time something like peace. Fall painted the valley in gold and red. Eli stood on the porch, watching his children scatter across the property. Caleb rode alongside Dutch, checking fence lines. The older girls helped Hannah with preserves in the kitchen. The younger ones played some complicated game involving a ball and a lot of screaming. Thomas sat beside Eli on the porch steps, working on his own small carving. The boy had shown surprising skill, with a knife careful, patient, focused. What are you making? Eli asked. Horse. For Mama. Hannah will love it. Not Hannah. Mama Clara. Eli's breath caught. What? Thomas looked up with those enormous dark eyes. You said she wanted children, wanted noise and laughing. I'm making her a horse so she knows we came. Eli couldn't speak. He pulled the boy close and held him tight. She knows, son. She definitely knows. The first year ended with Thanksgiving. 20 people around a table built for 12 food, covering every surface, noise and chaos, and life spilling over the edges. Eli stood to speak and found himself choking on words. A year ago, he managed. I was alone, hiding, dying slowly in an empty house. He looked at Hannah. Then a stubborn woman showed up at my door and told me grief wasn't a room to live in. Hannah smiled through tears. I didn't believe her. I tried to push her away. I tried to stay in the darkness because it felt safer than hope. He looked at the children. But you wouldn't let me. You climbed into my heart and made yourselves at home. You called me Pa and asked me impossible questions and showed me that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about staying. Caleb nodded. Rosie bounced in her seat. Thomas's small hand crept into his. I don't know what I did to deserve any of you. Maybe nothing. Maybe grace isn't about deserving. His voice broke. But I'm grateful. Every day. For this table. this noise, this beautiful, chaotic, overwhelming life. I'm grateful for every single one of you." "Even Rosie?" Caleb asked. "Even Rosie?" "That's very generous of you." The table erupted in laughter. Hannah rose and took Eli's hand. "1 year ago, I was preparing for a Thanksgiving with no food and no hope. Then a wagon appeared in the darkness filled with everything we needed. I didn't know who sent it. I didn't know why." She squeezed Eli's hand. "Now I know. It was sent by a man who'd forgotten how to live, but remembered how to love. A man who thought he was broken beyond repair, but had more to give than anyone I've ever known." "You're making me blush," Eli muttered. "Good. You deserve to blush." She turned to the children. "This is your family now. All of you. No one can take that away. No matter what happens, you belong here. You belong to us. You belong to each other." Thomas tugged at Eli's sleeve. "Pa." "Yes, son. I love you." 3 words. The most Thomas had ever spoken at once. Eli knelt beside the boy, tears streaming down his face. "I love you too, Thomas. I love all of you." The boy wrapped his arms around Eli's neck. Around them, their family held hands and began to pray. Not for miracles, not for rescue, for gratitude, for presence, for the simple miracle of being together. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside, there was warmth. There was noise. There was home. And Eli Cartwright, who had spent 4 years learning to die, finally remembered how to live. 5 years passed like water through fingers. Eli stood at the window of Cartwright Station, watching his children scatter across the property in the early morning light. Not 18 anymore. 23 now. 5 more had come in the years since that first Thanksgiving, each one finding their way to the ranch through one crisis or another. "You're brooding again." Hannah's arm slipped around him from behind. He leaned into her warmth. "Thinking. About everything. Nothing. How different this all looks from 5 years ago. Better or worse? Better. Impossibly better." She pressed a kiss to his shoulder. "Caleb's waiting for you in the barn. Something about the new foal. That boy's going to know more about horses than I do by next year. He already does. He's just too polite to say so." Eli found Caleb in the foaling stall, 17 now, and tall as his father had been. The young man knelt beside a chestnut mare, hands gentle on her flank. "She's struggling," Caleb said without looking up. "Foal's turned wrong. You know what to do." "I think so. But I wanted you here, just in case." Eli crouched beside him. "Show me." For the next hour, they worked together in focused silence. Caleb's hands were steady, confident. He'd learned well. When the foal finally slid free, wet and perfect and alive, Caleb let out a breath that shook his whole body. "I did it." "You did." "I was so scared I'd lose her." Fear doesn't disqualify you from saving things, son. Sometimes it's what makes you try harder. Caleb looked at him with eyes too old for 17. "Is that what happened with you?" "With us?" "What do you mean?" "You were scared. When you first came to Mercy House, I could see it. But you came anyway." Eli sat back against the stall wall. The mare nuzzled her foal, beginning the ancient work of bonding. "I was terrified," he admitted. "Every single time. I kept thinking I'd ruin everything, that you'd all see I wasn't worth the trouble. But you came anyway. Your Mrs. Mercer didn't give me much choice." Caleb smiled. "She doesn't give anyone much choice. That's her superpower." Among many, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the foal take its first wobbly steps. "Pa." Caleb's voice was hesitant. "I need to tell you something." "All right." "I've been writing to someone, a girl, in Cheyenne." Eli's eyebrows rose. "Have you now?" "Her name's Sarah. Her father runs the mercantile there. We've been corresponding for 6 months." Caleb's face flushed. "I want to ask her to come visit, to meet the family." "That's serious?" "I think so. I hope so." The young man met Eli's eyes. Is that all right? I know I'm young and there's still so much I need to learn, but Caleb. Eli put a hand on his shoulder. You're the finest young man I know. If this Sarah has any sense, she'll see that too. You're not disappointed that I might be thinking about leaving someday. Leaving. To start my own family. My own life. The words hit Eli harder than he expected. He'd always known this day would come, that the children would grow, would go, would build lives beyond Cartwright Station. But knowing and feeling were different things. I could never be disappointed in you, Eli said carefully. And starting a family doesn't mean leaving this one. It means expanding it. Caleb's eyes glistened. Really? Really? Now tell me more about this Sarah. The conversation stretched into morning. By the time they emerged from the barn, Eli's heart was full and aching in equal measure. His children were growing up. The world was calling them forward. He just had to learn to let them go. Rosie found him on the porch that afternoon staring at nothing. You look constipated, she announced. Emotionally constipated. Thank you for that assessment. Caleb told me about Sarah. Is that why you're moping? I'm not moping. You're definitely moping. She dropped into the chair beside him. It's weird, you know, thinking about Caleb getting married, having kids. He was just a scrawny 12-year-old when you showed up. 13. He was 13. Whatever. The point is, time moves. People change. That's not a tragedy. Eli looked at her. 16 now, sharp as a tack and terrifyingly perceptive. When did you get so wise? I was born wise. You just weren't paying attention. Rosie. It's okay to be sad, Pa. It's okay to miss things before they're even gone. But you can't hold us so tight we can't breathe. She reached over and took his hand. We're not going to forget you. We're not going to stop being your kids just because we grow up. I know. Do you? Because you've got that look. The one you used to have before Hannah. Like you're already grieving something that hasn't died yet. The accuracy of her observation stole his breath. I spent a lot of years alone, he said quietly. It taught me to brace for loss. Well, stop it. You've got 23 kids, a wife who adores you, and a ranch full of people who'd walk through fire for you. Whatever you're bracing for, it's not coming. You don't know that. I know you. I know us. And I know that whatever happens, we face it together. She squeezed his hand. That's what family means. You taught me that. Eli pulled her into a hug. She tolerated it for exactly 3 seconds before squirming away. Okay, enough emotions. I have chores. Thank you, Rosie. For what? For being exactly who you are. She rolled her eyes, but he caught the smile as she walked away. Thomas found him next. 10 years old now, no longer silent, though still a boy of few words. He sat beside Eli on the porch steps without speaking. They watched the sun move across the valley. Pa. Yes, son. Are you scared of dying? The question came from nowhere. Eli's heart stuttered. What makes you ask that? Billy Parsons said his grandfather died last week. Just fell asleep and didn't wake up. Thomas picked at a splinter in the step. Billy said old people die all the time. I'm not that old. You're 57. Thank you for the reminder. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't want you to die. The simple declaration cracked something open in Eli's chest. I don't want to die either, son. But everyone does eventually. That's how life works. I know. I remember before, when I didn't have anyone. When everything was dark and quiet and nobody came. The boy's voice trembled. I don't want to go back to that. Eli pulled Thomas onto his lap, holding him close. You won't. Even when I'm gone, and that won't be for a very long time, you'll have your brothers and sisters. You'll have Hannah. You'll have this whole family. But I want you. And you have me. Right now, right here, you have me. Eli pressed a kiss to the boy's hair. I can't promise forever, Thomas. Nobody can. But I can promise today, and tomorrow, and every day I have left. Promise. Promise. Thomas nestled closer. I love you, Pa. I love you too, son. More than you'll ever know. Dinner that night was chaos as always. 23 voices competing for attention. Food passing in every direction. Laughter erupting at random intervals. Eli sat at the head of the table, Hannah at the foot, their children arrayed between them like the most precious constellation. Quiet, Hannah called. The room settled. Mostly. Your father has something to say. Eli stood suddenly nervous. He'd faced down cattle rustlers, survived blizzards, built an empire from nothing. But 23 pairs of eyes watching him expectantly still made his palms sweat. Tomorrow marks 5 years, he said. 5 years since we became a family. Since you came to live on this ranch. Since... His voice caught. Since you saved my life. You saved us, Caleb corrected quietly. We saved each other. Eli looked around the table. I want you all to know something. When I was alone, I thought that was the end of my story. I thought I'd live and die in that empty house, never feeling anything again. He met Hannah's eyes across the room. But then a wagon of food showed up at an orphanage, and a stubborn woman demanded I stop hiding, and 18 children climbed into my heart and refused to leave. 23 now, Rosie pointed out. 23 now. And every single one of you. His voice broke. He pressed on. Every single one of you is worth more to me than everything I own. The land, the cattle, the house, none of it matters without you. Pa's getting mushy, one of the younger boys whispered. Let him be mushy, Caleb shot back. He's earned it. Eli wiped his eyes. I just want you to know that whatever happens, whatever the future brings you, are my greatest achievement. Not the ranch, not the money. You, this family, this life we've built together. Hannah rose and walked the length of the table. She took his hand. 5 years ago, I was a widow running an orphanage that was falling apart. I had no hope, no resources, no reason to believe anything would get better. She looked at the children. Now I have everything, because of you, because of him, because we chose each other. Are we going to pray or what? Rosie demanded. The food's getting cold. Laughter broke the tension. Hands clasped around the table. Eli led the prayer voice steady now. Thank you for this food. Thank you for this family. Thank you for every difficult road that led us here. Amen. Amen. 23 voices echoed. The meal exploded into motion. Eli ate little content to watch, to listen, to marvel at how loud and chaotic and beautiful his life had become. After dinner, Hannah found him at Clara's grave. He visited less often now, not because he'd forgotten, but because grief had transformed into something gentler, a scar instead of an open wound. The children are in bed, she said, settling beside him on the cold ground. Mostly. Rosie, reading under her covers with a candle. I pretended not to notice. Eli smiled. She'll set herself on fire one of these days. Probably, but she'll learn. They sat in comfortable silence. The stars wheeled overhead. I was thinking, Hannah said eventually, about what you said at dinner, about the children being your greatest achievement. Did I say something wrong? No. It just made me think about what Clara would say, if she could see all this. Eli's throat tightened. What do you think she'd say? I think she'd be proud. I think she'd be relieved that you finally let yourself live. Hannah took his hand, and I think she'd be a little jealous of the noise. A laugh broke from Eli's chest. She always wanted a loud house. Well, she got one, just not the way she expected. Do you think? He hesitated. Do you think she'd like you? I think she'd love me. I think she'd love the children. I think she'd look at this family and know that her prayers were answered, even if the answer came after she was gone. Eli wiped his eyes. I talk to her sometimes. Tell her about the kids, about you. I know. Thomas told me. Of course he did. He also said he leaves flowers sometimes, when no one's looking. Eli's heart clenched. He does. He says Clara deserves presents too, because she's part of the family. The tears came freely now. Eli didn't try to stop them. She is, he managed. She always will be. Hannah leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm glad you had her, Eli. I'm glad you loved her. It made you the man you are. And what man is that? A man who knows how to love, how to grieve, how to let go and hold on at the same time. She lifted her head to meet his eyes. A man worth waiting for. He kissed her gentle and deep. Thank you, he whispered against her lips. For what? For seeing me, for staying, for building this life with me. Thank you for letting me. They walked back to the house together hand in hand. Spring arrived with news that changed everything. Sarah came to visit, stayed for a month, left with Caleb's ring on her finger and a wedding date set for fall. You're sure? Eli asked him privately. I've never been more sure of anything. She's a good woman. She reminds me of Hannah. Strong, kind, doesn't put up with nonsense. Eli laughed. Then you're in for an interesting life. That's what I'm hoping for. The wedding was held at Cartwright Station, of course. The whole valley turned out. Even Patricia Whitmore, 5 years humbled and softer around the edges. Grief had finally finished its work on her, leaving acceptance in its wake. Eli stood beside Caleb at the altar serving as best man. Nervous? He asked. Terrified. Good. Shows you're taking it seriously. Were you this scared when you married Hannah? More. I'd forgotten how to hope. The fear was mixed up with all kinds of other things. But it worked out. It worked out. Sarah appeared at the end of the aisle, and Caleb's face transformed. Wonder. Love. Joy so pure it almost hurt to witness. Eli recognized that expression. Had worn it twice in his life. He stepped back and let his son claim his future. The reception lasted until midnight. Eli danced with Hannah with Rosie, with every daughter who'd let him. His feet ached, but he didn't care. You look happy, Dutch observed, finding him at the refreshment table. I am happy. Took you long enough? Better late than never. Dutch clapped his shoulder. Clara's smiling tonight. Can almost hear her laughing from here. Eli glanced at the hill where her grave sat in darkness. Yeah, he said softly. I think she is. Caleb and Sarah built a house on the far edge of the property, close enough to visit daily, far enough to build their own life. Eli helped with the construction, pouring his knowledge into the walls and floors. You're putting too much work into this, Caleb protested. It's my grandson's future home. Nothing's too much. Sarah's not even pregnant yet. Give it time. Caleb laughed, but his eyes were serious. Pa, can I ask you something? Anything. How do I not mess this up? Marriage, family, being a father someday. How do I do it right? Eli set down his hammer. You won't do it right. Not all the time. You'll make mistakes. You'll fail. You'll have days where you wonder what the hell you were thinking. That's not very encouraging. Let me finish. The secret isn't being perfect. The secret is showing up anyway, every day, even when you're tired, even when you're scared, even when you think you're doing everything wrong. That's it. Just show up. That's everything. Love isn't a feeling, son. It's a choice you make over and over. It's staying when leaving would be easier. It's trying when giving up makes more sense. He put his hand on Caleb's shoulder. You learned that lesson earlier than most. You'll be fine. Caleb pulled him into a hug. Thank you, Pa, for everything. Thank me by building a good life. That's all I've ever wanted for any of you. The news came in October. Sarah was pregnant. Caleb burst into the main house at dawn, face shining with tears and joy. I'm going to be a father. The household erupted. Children cheering Hannah, crying Eli standing in the middle of it all with his heart so full he thought it might burst. Grandpa, Rosie said, testing the word. Grandpa Eli has a ring to it. I'm too young to be a grandpa. You're 62. In spirit, I'm 40. Sure you are. The pregnancy brought new fears. Eli remembered too well what had happened with Clara. The bleeding, the helplessness, the grave on the hill. She's not Clara, Hannah reminded him gently. This isn't that. I know, but nothing. Sarah is healthy. The doctor says everything's progressing normally. You need to stop expecting tragedy. I'm not expecting it. I'm just prepared for it. That's the same thing. She was right. She usually was. The baby came in June. A boy. 7-pound screaming lungs, all 10 fingers and toes. Eli held his grandson for the first time and felt time fold in on itself. He was holding Benjamin again, the son he'd lost, the future that had died. But this was different. This was new life. This was proof that the story didn't end with loss. What's his name? He managed. Caleb and Sarah exchanged glances. Benjamin, Caleb said. Benjamin Elijah Morrison. Eli's knees buckled. Hannah caught him. We wanted to honor both of them, Sarah said softly. The son you lost and the father you became. Eli couldn't speak. He held the baby against his chest and wept. Pa, Caleb's voice was worried. Is that okay? We should have asked first. It's perfect. Eli looked at his son through a blur of tears. It's absolutely perfect. Baby Benjamin changed everything again. The ranch had known noise before, but a baby's cry carried differently. It reached into the bones of the house and said, This is what we were built for. Thomas, 15, now appointed himself the baby's guardian. He's my nephew, he explained seriously. I have responsibilities. You sound like an old man. I learned from the best. Eli watched his youngest son rock his nephew to sleep and marveled at the symmetry. Thomas, who had once been silent and afraid, now singing lullabies in a voice that had finally found itself. You did good, Dutch said, finding Eli on the porch. All of it. Everything you built. We built it together. No, you started it. That wagon of food, that first step through Mercy House's door, that was all you. I was terrified. Brave men usually are. Dutch was quiet for a moment. I'm retiring, he said. End of the year. Moving to town, finding a place with less stairs. Eli's heart sank. You can't retire. You're part of this place. I was part of this place. Now it's got plenty of parts, all those children you raised ready to step up. Dutch smiled. You don't need me anymore, Eli. You haven't for a while. That's not true. It's true and you know it, but I appreciate you pretending otherwise. They shook hands. It felt like an ending. But endings, Eli had learned, were just beginnings in disguise. Rosie married the following year. A lawyer from Denver. Sharp, ambitious, utterly devoted to her. He knows what he's getting into, Eli asked dubiously. He knows I'm impossible. He loves me anyway. Then he's either very brave or very foolish. Both. That's why I chose him. She took his arm at the altar. 20 years old, fierce and beautiful. Thank you, Pa. For what? For showing me what love looks like. Real love. The kind that shows up. You taught me as much as I taught you. I know. I'm pretty amazing. He laughed, kissed her cheek, and gave her away. The years kept moving. Children grew up, left home, started families, came back for holidays with spouses and babies and stories to tell. The dinner table expanded, again and again, until Eli lost count of how many places he needed to set. This is chaos, he told Hannah one Thanksgiving, surveying the crowd. This is what you built. We built. We built. She smiled. Still terrified. Always. Good. Shows you're paying attention. He kissed her. 40 years of marriage, and he still felt like the luckiest man alive. The diagnosis came without warning. Eli's heart, the doctor said. Weakening. Not much time, months, maybe a year. He told Hannah first, watched her world collapse in her eyes. No, she whispered. Not yet. We're not done yet. I know. There has to be something treatment surgery. There isn't. She broke. He held her while she shattered this woman who had held him together for so long. I'm not ready, she sobbed. I can't do this without you. You won't be without me. I'll be everywhere. In every wall of this house. In every child we raised. In every grandchild we'll never see. That's not enough. It has to be. It's all I have to give. They told the children together. The room went silent. Then came the tears, the protests, the desperate bargaining. Caleb's voice broke through. How long? Months, maybe longer if I'm lucky. Then we make them count. Caleb's jaw set. Every single day, we make them count. The final months were the fullest of Eli's life. He taught the grandbabies to ride, carved toys for the ones not yet born, sat with each of his children one by one, and said the things that needed saying. To Caleb, you're the son I never thought I'd have. Lead this family well. To Rosie, never stop asking questions, even the impossible ones. To Thomas, your voice was worth waiting for. Use it. To each of the others, specific words, specific love, specific blessings. Hannah stayed beside him through it all, held his hand when the pain came, read to him when he couldn't sleep, loved him with the same fierce devotion she'd shown since that first day on his doorstep. I don't want to leave you, he told her one night. Then don't. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. You taught me that. Hannah. Stay as long as you can. Fight for every minute. And when you can't fight anymore. Her voice broke. I'll be right here, holding your hand, just like always. Promise? Promise. The end came on a November morning. Appropriate, Eli thought. November was when it all started, when a wagon of love changed everything. His children gathered, all of them, spouses, grandchildren, the whole beautiful chaos of the family he'd built. Hannah held his hand. Thomas held the other. Pa, Thomas's voice thick with tears. Can you hear me? I hear you, son. I love you. I love you too, all of you. He looked around the room, saw Clara waiting in the corner smiling, saw Benjamin in her arms, no longer an infant, but a young boy with Eli's eyes. They're here, he whispered. They came for me. Who, Pa? Clara. Benjamin. He smiled. They say the house is ready. Hannah pressed her forehead to his hand. Then go. We'll be okay. You're sure? I've never been more sure. You taught us well, Eli. You loved us well. Now rest. He closed his eyes. In the darkness, he felt hands lift him. Clara's voice warm and familiar. You did it. You built everything I dreamed of. I missed you. I know. I watched. I saw every moment. Are you proud of me? Always, always. He let go. And in a house full of people he loved, surrounded by the family he'd built from nothing, Elijah Cartwright went home. They buried him on the hill between Clara and Benjamin. The whole valley came, stood in the November cold, and remembered a man who'd started as a hermit and ended as the heart of the biggest family in Wyoming. Hannah spoke last. Eli would hate this, she said, and the crowd laughed through tears. All these people, all this fuss. He'd say we should be working, not standing around. She looked at the grave, at the 3 headstones that now marked her family's beginning. But he'd also be proud of this turnout, of these children, of the life we built together from nothing but a wagon full of love and the courage to stay. She touched the fresh earth. Rest now, my love. You earned it. And when my time comes, I'll find you on that porch. You promised me, watching the sunset, counting our blessings. She stepped back. Her children surrounded her. What do we do now? One of the younger ones asked. Hannah looked at the house in the valley below, at the lights glowing warm against the coming winter. We do what he taught us, she said. We show up. We stay. We love each other through whatever comes. And then we pass it on. To our children. To their children. Until the whole world knows that family isn't blood, it's choice. It's showing up. It's the love we give when we have nothing left. Caleb put his arm around her. Let's go home, Mama. They walked down the hill together. 23 children, their spouses, their children. A family built from nothing but courage and love. Behind them the sun set on 3 graves, and the man who'd filled them all with meaning. Elijah Cartwright died in November, surrounded by the family he'd built. But the story didn't end there. It continued in Caleb's steady leadership, in Rosie's endless questions, in Thomas's gentle voice teaching the next generation. It continued in every grandchild who heard about the mysterious rancher and the wagon full of love. It continued in Hannah, who lived another 12 years and joined him on the hill one spring morning, finally ready to find him on that porch. And it continues still. In every family built from broken pieces, in every heart that chooses love over fear, in every person who shows up, stays, and refuses to let grief win. Because that's what Eli learned in the end. That grief isn't a room to live in. That love given away becomes medicine. That family is the choice to stay when leaving would be easier. And that sometimes the bravest thing a broken man can do is fill a wagon with love and leave it in the darkness, hoping someone will find it. Someone always does.